to imagine all life as you know it stopping instantaneously and every molecule in your body exploding at the speed of light.
Total protonic reversal.
Protonic reversal.
Protonic reversal with your host, Conan Neutron. Broadcasting from a secret underground lair in Milwaukee, Wisconsin.
A gigantic middle finger to everything that is rotten about music, rock and roll, and corporate power.
Thing is, though, if you don't laugh, you're going to go on a killing spree with sharpened nails.
Confidence of a hero or a fool. I wasn't exactly certain which.
Could not be more professional.
It's only one I choose to devote my life to. That's okay.
It means something. It means something.
And they got away.
You know, that's my take on it. What's yours?
Protonic reversal.
That's like a science thing, right?
Indeed it is. It is a science thing. It's a science place. It's a scientific fact that we're all up in your face. It is time once again for the one, the only Protonic reversal. Welcome to it. Normal day and time. Second episode of the week. How about that? Throwing off my enemies, throwing off my friends. It's throwing off my sleep schedule is what I'm doing more than anything else. But very excited to have tonight's guest on. We'll begin to him shortly. This is John of the band John. One of the Johns of John, or John times 2 if you look at Spotify. And very excited to talk to him about their upcoming inaugural first year U.S. tour with the band Tunic. So that's very exciting, relevant to the interest of this show. I think they're a hell of a band, and looking forward to talking to that fella. It's much later for him, so it's much more of a sacrifice for him than it is for me, even though I'm the one I've already complained once about doing the show that I always do at the time that I always do it. But before we get into any of that, welcome to Conan Neutron's Protonic Reversal. I am your host, Conan Neutron. I am a rock and roll lifer that has been touring and recording for 23 years. Most known for the band Conan Neutron, The Secret Friends. Music is a huge part of my life, and he's the format of this very long-running podcast to talk about music with musicians whose work I enjoy and respect, but who may not be household names. This is episode 340. Now, if this is your first time listening to the show, archives of it are available for free. No ads, no sponsors, no kidding, at protonicreversal.com. However, if you want to support the show and get episodes sooner, $1 a month at patreon.com/protonicreversal will achieve that goal. And if you like the show, or even just a single episode, please feel free to like, subscribe on your platform of choice, share it around the internet, and even leave a review. All that helps people discover the show, beat back the almighty algorithmic overlords, and it's just a darn nice thing to do. There we go. The almighty algorithmic overlords. I don't know what ever possessed me to type such a sentence, but I now have to say it every time. So it's the law. It's the law of podcasting, people. Anyway, so let's get down to it. The name of the band is John, and there's a good reason for that, because the dudes' names are John. They're a hell of a band. Like them a lot. Listen to their records. And they're coming over to the States, which a lot of you live in the States, with the excellent band Tunic. So without any further ado, let's talk to John Newton. John, how you doing, sir?
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
I'm in.
You're in. It's much later for you than for me. Did you notice I got in a complaint nonetheless, though? So I feel good about that.
I know. I've stayed up, especially late for you. I'm usually in bed probably about 4 hours ago. But I'm here in my kitchen in usually sunny Brighton on the south coast of the UK. And it's a pleasure to be here with you.
It's a pleasure to have you. You came to my attention because of sibling show Undetermined. I love those fellas. And they basically rattled my change a little bit about, hey, do you know this band John? I'm like, I don't know what you're talking about. John who? And it was like, no, there's this band called John. I'm like, the name of the band is John?
It's our fault purely, but we get that a lot. but yeah, it's an important manifesto. I think obviously people find it funny, and obviously it is.
I was jealous though more than anything else because I was like, that's a four-letter, one-word band name. That's astounding. That's amazing. I was like, oh, that, and then I was like, oh, the dudes are named John. Okay, that makes sense. All right.
Yeah. Also, I think when we were growing up, I guess in our kind of musical education or whatever you want to call it, I think we came across a lot of bands, in the 2000s that were quite sensationalist about their approach, and we both felt like we wanted to kind of cut that fat off and try and bring it back to something that we felt more appropriate. So that name was kind of a distinct idea to kind of propose something that was maybe something less sensational, less dressed up. So it makes a lot of sense with what we make, in our opinion, and we've had lots of people comment on it over the years, and a lot of very well respected people saying that they like the name. So I mean, it's no the projectile vomits or something like along those lines for sure, but like it works. I mean, it's kind of hard to get a username, I would imagine. But I mean, obviously there's the handle, the ×2 thing, which we get a lot of flack about, but it was mainly because in the really early days of like Spotify, you didn't have the back end, or you didn't have anyone to even speak to.
You know what? It's important for people to remember that even these tools, which are basically almost like first times free drug pusher for like here's how to do things the way we want you to do them training sessions, that was not available at all, and it was sort of like it was this big like locked black box ostensibly. So
I remember a friend who worked in music management years and years ago saying, I've got this trial thing to, I think it's probably gonna like change the face of music, and it was Spotify. So he like gave me the trial, and I was like, obviously it was a completely new thing. But
stream music. Why would you stream it when you own it? Yeah.
I mean, obviously you had those kind of like, the Napster stuff, earlier on and whatever.
I feel like Spotify hit in the UK quicker than it did in the US. I think it took hold in the UK first, if I remember correctly. Maybe
I don't quite remember really. I just find it funny that basically what my friend said kind of happened, really, that it would, kind of change the face of it. And
good on him.
I mean, he's out of music now. Well, kind of, but yeah. So yeah, basically, long and short of it was we added the thing because we kept attaching to other Johns, and I just wanted everything in one place.
Right.
But we still get a lot of people being like, "Why do you have that handle on?" And I'm like, "Well, it's a long story. I don't want to go through it again." But yeah, it is an important like manifesto really for what the band has developed into and developed from. So even though it's got that comic element, that kind of darkly comic element of maybe not being easy to find or being something that just is a bit silly.
And it's a name everyone knows, unlike say Conan, by the way. And even though like whatever over here it's slang for a couple things, some of which is a bit untoward, but like it's a familiar word. Which there's a friend of mine, and I wish I could remember when I heard this, but said that there's the for a good band name there's the drunk in a bar test, meaning that if somebody you're talking to a friend, you're telling them about your band, and it's a loud bar. Does it pass that test of like, do they know what you just said? So like John, it's like, oh, John, yeah, sure. Whereas it's, if you have
we just get the like, what's your band's name? And you say it, and then they're like, no, what's your band's
but what's
name?
The band? Yeah, well, that's your name. Yeah, like, well, I know that's your name. Like, no, but that's the band's name as well. I'm like, oh,
yeah,
what?
But yeah, again, it's something that was like we didn't want it to color the music too much. There's certain names that just kind of send you in a direction that automatically puts you off or is like, oh yeah, we're a heavy rock band, you know.
Yeah.
And,
Are you? Had no idea. Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know. I think that's just
There's
our
bands
character.
I will never listen to, based solely on the name. I'm like, I despise that name, and maybe they're the best band ever. I'll never know because I'll never electively listen to it. And I hate to sound that judgmental, but I feel that strongly about it.
No. It's you know, it is one of the first things that people see, and there's kind of a nice element where people are like, you know, what is that? They don't know whether it is like a singer-songwriter.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Sure. Yeah. It could be something totally different. Yeah, of course, absolutely.
But I don't know. I like that. I like that kind of double take element, and I mean that's what we've always tried to do in songs, and you know, without being, you know, too pretentious. I guess that's what you're trying to make. You're trying to make someone, whether that's in art, film, or music, you're trying to make them do a double take in order to kind of rethink their position. And I think, again, that was part of what we wanted to try and do, where, you know, again, there's certain themes or certain visuals that are kind of like quite trite and repetitive within kind of, especially kind of more rock-based music. And I think we just wanted to kind of push in different directions.
Sure.
So, you know, they're all little things that we thought about. It wasn't, you know, us just being like, yeah, we'll call ourselves John and it'll be ridiculous. So, yeah.
So you came to my attention right when Nocturnal Maneuvers came out. So that was, a couple years back. But can you just, it doesn't have to be a brief history of time, but, let the listeners know how the band started. Because you've been around for a little bit. I mean, like, I think, 2013?
Yeah. So it kind of started, we met at university in East London, talked a lot, didn't do anything. And then when we got kind of, you know, everyone disperses away after being in London, and me and Johnny were kind of left and had always talked about doing, you know, just music that we liked in common.
Right.
And then eventually we were like, we should just get in a room and see what happens. And thankfully kind of some songs flowed out from there. Recorded some kind of shoddy little EPs, which, you know, were good fun, but eventually kind of pushed on to the what we consider is the first album, which is called Godspeed in the National Limit, in 2017. No one was really interested to release it, so we set up our own label based on some money that I borrowed off my dad.
And that's Pets Care, right? Pets Care Records.
Yeah, which is funny because it's actually, Johnny was living and still lives in Crystal Palace, which is at the south, in the deep south of London. And there was a pet shop that was closing down, and it just had a really, really sad looking cat on the front. So we kind of thought, well, you know, no wonder you're closing down, because the fucking animal was like super sad.
Right, of course.
I think it was a parrot as well that looked depressed, you know, and
yeah.
So I think I'd made Johnny a birthday card as a joke with this.
I think I can find it, or I think I can put it on the screen. This is gonna not help the audio listeners at all, but is the.
Yeah, there's the sad cat. Very good. Jeez, you're very professional.
And it just look, that cat just looks so disappointed. It's just like,
exactly. So no wonder they closed down. But basically the idea was, oh well, let's take this now defunct branding, and let's just like give it a new life.
Sure.
So we kind of just completely ripped it off.
You've already got the logo.
And the typography.
Yeah, exactly.
So we just stole that, and it's really funny now when it kind of gets read out on the radio by, you know, BBC.
Yeah, very proper. Pets Care Records.
Yeah. And so it's a little in joke for us, but
sure.
But to be honest, like I know I say in jest about like people not being interested, but we actually kind of learned that. Going alone on that album and our second album, Out Here on the Fringes, which followed 2 years after, was just such a really good decision. Like both financially and we just learn a lot about the world of releasing music in a way that is kind of sustainable.
Well, you got your hands on it. Like you've got your hands on it every aspect, and I mean, it's interesting you say that. And this is not like here's Conan Neutron in his soapbox, but I think it would be good for a lot of bands to at least try it, just to kind of like get the ideas for the mechanisms of how it works and like certain things that you can put into the planning process because you understand what it's like to fulfill pre-orders and to like source. Oh yeah, well the jackets are going to be here on Tuesday, and we have the vinyl on Friday, and so on.
Yeah, and
so
everything costs money. Each
Yeah.
sticker costs money, so you have to you learn how to make very good decisions on what is important, and that's like you say that could be really key for even someone who's signed a major deal, because like you end up you've got to pay that back.
Well,
So,
you're taking out a loan basically against your prospective future that may or may not come to pass.
Exactly. So, we slipped every single one of those first two records into, didn't put it in shrink wrap because we could cut round some costs to put it into the kind of plastic sleeves, which I was like, well, that's not an important thing. Like on the whole, the important thing is obviously pressing enough records and, distributing them to the right place and getting them to the right people. So we made those decisions sensibly, and we've always had to run on that because we've never received an advance for any record. I know that's not rare for a lot of bands who operate, but there are I guess people who have developed from the same kind of era, who have followed different paths, and that's fine. Like good on people who have kind of managed to gain that investment. But I'm very pleased that we've retained a lot of stuff in house, and I just find it really important in the creative process as well, because I come from an arts background.
Sure.
So all of the collateral around it is really, really important and enjoyable for me, and that's something that I wouldn't want to kind of give away lightly.
And you bring up a great point, because there's some bands that like the last thing they want to do is like worry about like that the artwork and the design. They're like, oh, they couldn't care less about it. I mean, but some of them it really shows.
But it's disappointing. It's really.
But I think you guys actually have a very cool aesthetic, like a design aesthetic to all the records that like it's kind of like that a lot of it can be I'm sure there's an actual term for this, but it can be summed up for me as like, oh, what's that? It's the ooh, what's that aspect.
It's the double. I mean, it's that double take. I mean,
we're like, oh, is that what what is that?
I think that leads like really nicely onto something that I'm always thinking about in terms of like contemporary digestion of music. Like there's a big interest at the moment in very direct lyricism and very direct imagery, and
alarmingly so, where it's just like, oh yeah, there's no allegory or nuance at all to this, huh? All right.
Exactly, and that is something that I think is ultimately, I'm happy to say it, but I think it's ultimately pretty damaging to the way people digest music and digest culture in general. Right. That kind of slowing down of the attention span, the speeding up of the attention span with technology, and I just feel a bit uncomfortable with that. But I won't. I'm too stubborn to bow down to that. But,
sure. But it seems like, I mean, you're making archival objects and music in a ephemeral world, basically, and which is, I mean, that's extremely that's my brand identity too. You know what I mean? Like, there's a lot of people that feel that way, and I think there's a distinct danger that a lot of the things that have been normalized with the way to how to be a band are just going to seem like as dated as like, remember like production techniques where suddenly auto-tune was on everything. It's like, why is auto-tune on literally everything right now? And like, okay, Cher did that one song and now everybody's using it as a musical instrument, but it's going to be dated in that way, in the same way that like a MySpace profile would look now. You know what I mean? Where it's like, wow, that was of a certain era, and that looks like it's of an era.
I think, I mean, that's what I think. That's what we remind ourselves and try and, I think that will be true in many cases. And and I just find it distinctly interesting that that kind of really direct way of operating is kind of is very popular.
But then also I look at like something like, just even looking at the albums, right? Looking at like Nocturnal Maneuvers, like that's a record that looks like it could sit very nicely next to like Chairs Missing or something, or like just any record of like any time, because it doesn't really look like, a design aesthetic like tied to a specific timeline or thing.
Well, it's the same as the name. Again, you don't want to you want something to be able to stand. Yes, it's like
the Fliggity Buggleworts. Okay, well you're not going to regret that name, are you? 17 records later.
No, or like distinct kind of like punk based, rock based.
Where it's like a reference and
yeah. And I don't know. Again, coming from that arts background, I don't know. Just get really excited about building imagery around the lyric writing as well, and so actually that's something I will make at the same time as I write, which is really handy to build the world that I think the songs are living in. So
that's interesting. So do you have like locations and or up to even like pictures and stuff where you're like, oh, that would be?
I think I have distinct locations where things are kind of written from when I write lyrics. Especially,
speak to that a little bit then. So talked about Godspeed and the National Limit. What is that? What's on the front here? I'll throw it on the screen again.
That's quite. So that's actually in Crystal Palace Park. It's called Crystal Palace Bowl.
Okay.
And it's called that because the old stage that was here before this modernist stage was an actual kind of classic outdoor bowl, which Bob Marley played.
Oh wow!
And I think Pixies, Cure played. Lots of people played over the years, and then they replaced it with this modernist stage. And actually, with like you might not know, but there's kind of a self-referential loop that Nocturnal Maneuvers is actually in the backstage space of that.
I knew it was a backstage thing, but I didn't know that's what it was. So that's interesting. Okay, so then hold on, I'll throw that up. In a second. This would be great if it wasn't a one-man show, wouldn't it? I could just be like, throw it up.
At least you're not like holding it up on like printout cards. So,
here's the record. It looks like this. Yeah, exactly. I mean, whatever. I guess that would. If that's the way you got to do it, that's the way you got to do it. But yeah, this is the the real kind of austere liminal space, sort of like, what is that? What am I looking at?
Yeah, I mean, like again,
doesn't immediately already evoke something. It's like, oh no, that's definitely the cover for that record, whatever that is.
Yeah, I mean, we kind of saw an image of the inside, and I was kind of struck by it and was like, we basically need to reshoot this because I knew it was such a perfect image for the kind of things.
It's very pretty too. Like it's got like a kind of like almost it gets overutilized when people describe anything art like, but like the same sort of world like David Lynch travels in, where it's like these mundane spaces elevated,
Yeah, I mean, he's you can't deny his kind of idiosyncratic view, and obviously he's someone who I've loved a lot of his work. So those kind of cinematic references are something that have kind of grown and grown within the body of work. So I think, at the start, that first album, we were, we're relatively new as a band. It's a bit more kind of straight up. People really like it. You know, that album seems to have done very, very well for us. But I think as we've grown as people and as we've grown with our influences, it just keeps opening up more, which is really, really nice after 10 years to still think that you have kind of more to expand upon.
Well, and then people have the opportunity to kind of go back to, right? And then they can
discover it's a
those
journey,
records.
you know. Yeah, absolutely.
How about Out Here in the Fringes? How about that one?
So I mean, I kind of I think I kind of shifted out also to the physical fringes of London with Johnny. Johnny was already out there, so again there was kind of this feeling of this the kind of metropolitan hub kind of just spitting out everything. So it's a kind of an area where there's lots of, you know, there's all sorts of stuff like, you know, lots of fly tipping, people, you know, putting stuff because they, you know, don't want to pay to dispose of it. And there were lots of these kind of scenes and thoughts that kind of came together within the songwriting. Also because, you know, I was physically living there as well.
Sure. Literally out in the fringes.
yeah. I mean, it's not. I don't think it was, you know, too, you know, it wasn't that simple. It was kind of, I liked the multiplicity of the title.
Yeah.
But also, you know, there's the kind of more socio-political, you know, fact of London being this kind of ever inflating city that pushes creatives out, you know, much like any, you know, many major cities. So I think there was, you know, you could read it on a micro and a macro, you know, level. So it was, I think I wanted to kind of get that in somehow. But again, going back, you know, to this idea of directness or exactitude, you know, there's at no point am I wanting to say anything too overtly. Like I've always wanted to channel it into language in a way that can be read with multiplicity.
Yeah, instead of just a direct, like, people are moving out to these exurbs because of this reason.
The government are bad.
Okay.
The government are bad.
Yeah, right. Exactly. That's almost too nuanced. Yeah, you're right. Yeah, it's very, and like... Yeah,
people are still doing it, though. That's the thing. Like, I
sure,
don't know.
Of course.
I just, I don't know. I just have a bit of an aversion to it, and I just love... I love bands that kind of gesture towards things, but in more visual kind of less direct terms, you know.
Certainly. Well, and that's you know, there's something to be said for that. I mean, I guess we've gone this far without mentioning band's a two-piece.
Yeah. I mean, I'm glad that hasn't come up because it was a constant...
I'm only bringing it up because there's a bunch of people that they don't know from the band, and so
absolutely no. I'm not.
If you listen to the records, you wouldn't necessarily think that it's a two-piece band.
Well, that's a good point, and I think when we started, you know, you do get the kind of bugbear of people kind of automatically jumping to
the White Stripes. Oh, yeah, okay.
Yeah. You know, Death from Above.
Right.
You
sure.
know,
Yeah.
You know, and
you sound exactly like this other band that coincidentally also has two people in it. Oh yeah, really?
Yeah, because we're saying exactly the same things, and you know,
right? Yeah.
But you know, I think we realized early on with I mean, I'm not going to go into huge technical details, but like we realized ways of kind of building dynamics with, you know, the certain equipment we use, and it became very apparent of like you need to learn how to use, you know, your dynamic shifts, because obviously you don't have so many, you have less layers to essentially kind of build. So I kind of, you know, I'm, you know, that's something that I think we've really become attuned to, just knowing how to kind of write songs with the limitations that we have. And that's not to say that we haven't pushed it, because there's always certain things that we bring in for new records and try things out, you know. But yeah, it's I think also with the live show as well, I think it's obviously not to use the word selling point, but I think people find that quite attractive, that it's like,
that's what I first heard of you guys is people like, oh, they've got a show, this band. Like before even like, oh, there's only 2 of them, it was like, oh, they're a fantastic live band. That's I heard, like, oh, great, cool, again. And then here's what I said, is like, well, at least I'll be able to remember the band name.
yeah, exactly.
But when there's fewer people involved, well, certainly it's easier for scheduling, right? But like, there's also less room for error. Like there's nobody covering you. There's nothing you can, like, oh,
there's nothing to hide.
Steve will get that. You know, okay, no, he won't. There's no one named Steve in this band.
No, it's just Johnny's foot. So yeah.
So I mean, does it? Like when you're practicing for the live show, like, do you just? I mean, is it just water for you at this point because you're just used to doing it? Is it still a bit of a higher wire act sometimes? Is it conditional, depending on the venue?
I think we're we've done it for so long now.
Yeah, because it's like almost 10 years you've been doing this, right? So
yeah, no, that we're really, like I said, we really know. You really have to hit it. You've really got to give a lot in the bits that really need a lot. And I think we always like to honor the song. We whenever we're writing, we do push ourselves to the point that we feel like it needs to get to, even within the kind of limited the limits of our bodies. And there's and there's also like, there's a fact that, obviously I'm the lead singer and I drum. So that's another thing that people don't, obviously we turn up to clubs and they start putting the mics out on, Johnny.
Yeah, they just assume, and it's like, oh no, that's not for him.
I mean, he does that. He's started doing some, more backing vocals these days. So actually, he does get a mic, but he's just not allowed to talk. So
well, and it's like, and there's such a limited palette for drummers that are the primary singer. It's like you're always going to hear about freaking Phil Collins. You're always going to hear about Don Henley. There's like, if you're lucky, maybe Levon Helm, but like. It's
I'll just get Phil Collins out the way straight away, and people say, I wasn't even going to say that, and I was like, I don't care, I need to get it out of the way.
Yeah, I need to get it out of the way. We need to not. I mean, you would hope it would be like, at least it was Karen Carpenter. It's like, oh well, she's a badass. All right, fine. But it's like, no, they have to say Phil Collins for some reason. It's very.
It's
very
just
weird.
the one. But yeah. So because I sing and I drum, there's a certain sense of like landing and writing on the beat, which I think is something that kind of creates quite a unique thing for the band, which is really nice. It's something that maybe wouldn't happen if you had a distinct singer or a guitar playing singer. So I think that now is so ingrained in my head when I write that I have this inbuilt kind of pentameter.
Yeah. Well, and it gives it a unique voicing too. Like in the same way that Chris Cornell in Soundgarden, he started off playing drums and like really good drummer too. Like he started off playing drums in that band and then ended up, they're like, oh, you'd be better as like, a shirtless rock god. Okay, cool. Well, he's going to do that. But he maintained that sense of vocal rhythm, right? Like that it's like, oh no, like I think when you're that intrinsically tied to something like drums, you're just going to approach that differently, and it's going to give it a unique voicing because of that. And it's noticeable. It's noticeable for a listener, even if they don't know why. It's noticeable.
No, and it's kind of it kind of comes intuitive, after a while. So like when I sit down and I'm patching kind of lyrics to ideas, it's kind of it scares me sometimes because it's literally just everything's just landing in my head. I don't even have to think about it.
Yeah, and it's just like when you start drumming, like what's the first thing, right? You got to learn your limb independence. Well, it's another kind of limb independence to be able to sing and drum as well.
And then actually when you get in the studio,
it's a different limb.
and then you're like, you split bits up for clarity.
Sure.
So now actually playing the drums without the vocals is actually harder.
Does it see? Because you're thinking about it now, right? Because you're like, oh wow, it's weird to like be playing this like.
You have to like hum it along, you know, and
Right.
make weird grunts, but hope the mic doesn't pick them up, you know.
Right. So you get your scratch vocal in. Yeah.
Yeah, if you could just like bring all the stems down and just hear these weird little grunts throughout the whole song. Yeah,
Yeah.
I hope not.
So, and I feel like you guys also do a good job of kind of knowing your audience, meaning like knowing like how many records should we be making where we're not stuck with a basement or or attic full of them, right? And
Yeah. I mean, obviously, going back to kind of the timeline, like the third record, we did start co-releasing with a wonderful label called Brace Yourself Records, who
Right.
I had heard a lot about. The director Ivano, who was always a name mentioned to me like way before. This happens a lot to us. We end up getting mentioned these people like our agent, and which is really nice because we always vet kind of everyone out who we work with.
Sure, yeah. See if there's any bad stories.
Well,
who to avoid, right?
Skeletons in the closet,
Exactly,
under the patio. So that was a kind of concerted effort to realize, actually, you know, we can kind of slightly expand this with, you know, even just little things like distribution in the States.
Yeah.
Or you know, Europe. So that was a really nice step on from those first two records that had done really well for us. But yeah, and I think we're just always, you know, we're always like to think we're just sensible about doing that, you know, because, you know, you want to keep it sustainable. You want to keep it, you know, something that grows gradually. Like I don't know, you know, do you even want to be the biggest band in the world? Because, you know,
It seems like a real pain.
Yeah, no. We've got loads of friends who kind of are on that train, and it's very hard to get off it. So I'm not saying like I wouldn't, you know, for example, there's a reason why we're doing this US tour, because, you know, it'd be lovely to kind of expand the knowledge of the band in a territory that we've never been to. So I'm not going to say no about more people knowing about the music. I'm just kind of saying like it is nice that, you know, to keep things, you know, feeling sustainable and of a good quality, you know.
Do you mean this tour?
Oh my God.
So again, for the audio
prepared.
listeners, let me explain that I just put the tour flyer up for the Tunic and John U.S. October 2023 tour, which you got Phoenix here, you got Los Angeles, Santa Ana, San Francisco, Seattle, Portland, Salt Lake City, Denver, St. Louis, Chicago, Toronto, Columbus, Philadelphia, Washington, D.C., and Indian Invite Us in Brooklyn, which we just.
I loved your change in tone for Canada. Like, is that like, that was so shitty. I loved it.
Technically, it is a U.S. Canada tour. So and that's but yeah, these are all great. These are all great venues.
That's good to hear. Yeah.
And I'll certainly put a link in the show notes. And I'm having David on next week too, so we'll chat more about that as well. But
The lovely David. Yeah.
Tell me how that came to pass, because I think this is very exciting, and hopefully I'll be able to see one of these.
Yeah,
because we're going to be out at the same time.
Yeah, exactly.
I think I'm back in time for the Chicago show. We'll see.
Cool, good stuff. Well, yeah, I mean, it was things started. You know, we literally had a first meeting about doing it in like February of 2020. So It was like,
wow. Okay, so pre-COVID even. Wow.
So
okay.
Well, it wasn't. It was about just kind of going to the States. So basically, it was like, oh, great, we finally.
March is when it got real for out here. So.
Yeah, and then it was just like, okay, well, this is all going to have to be like shelved for a later date.
Sure.
And you know, like I said, obviously, having been a band for 10 years, you know, there's always those kind of thoughts, you know, about younger bands and people saying, oh, you know, maybe we'll go to South by or whatever. And I was just
you're hanging out with a band, and it's like, oh yeah, well, we got to get together and do, oh yeah, cool, and like, how much is that like? How much of that lasts beyond getting to back in the van? Like, all right, that's never gonna happen. But,
so I'm
or the logistics are just so monumentally difficult that it's like, I don't know how that would happen.
Yeah, so like, I'm pleased with, like, I think some people were quite surprised that we hadn't done it earlier, but obviously there's pretty good financial reasons why it's hard to do, and especially as like a mostly independent act. So I'm really proud that we've that we've kind of sensibly waited to a point where we feel like it is actually worth doing. I'm not going to lie and say that it doesn't scare me a bit shitless about
because you don't have the kind of safety net that like some big major label band would have, where it's like the whole thing is sort of, all right, I am putting it all on black, let's go.
But it does feel a bit like if we were gonna do it, I think now is a good time.
Yeah.
And I feel like from the response that we've already had, it seems like there are people there who want to see us. Obviously, naturally, you've got cities that are a bit more forthcoming because of their musical background, but
sure.
I'm excited about seeing the country kind of properly. Like, I've only ever been to Boston and New York, so I'm really looking forward to getting kind of stuck into it. And you're
covering some ground. I mean, you got pretty much the entire, more or less the entire West Coast. Like, I know people from San Diego will like quibble about that, but come on. And including Phoenix, so you got the Southwest represented. You got Salt Lake City. You got Denver. I mean, you got the mountains in there. Like, there's not as many Midwest states maybe as people would like, but you can't. Look, you can break your brain trying to please everybody with this kind of thing. Like, and then you're starting in Arizona. You're in New York. Great. That's coast to coast, man, and then some.
Yeah. Well, I mean, again, you have a few pals who maybe are in a slightly higher echelons who are like, oh,
sure.
Well, you could go out and do the East Coast, and then you could go out and do the West Coast. But like, honestly, like financially, I mean, I know that you might be paying more for staying longer, in terms of like looking after yourself. But I was just like, we need to go and do it, properly, like, because it's. I'd like to say we can come back, but it's just a big investment. So I really want to make sure it's worthwhile to just go out and do it, and luckily, obviously, we got that opportunity. So,
well, but it's also not just doing it for the sake of doing it. Like, it seems like tactically it makes sense, right? And I hate to break it down that way, but when you're a small independent band, which granted you have some degree of notoriety for sure, but like, let's be real. Like, when you're in a city you've never played in a country that you've never gone on tour for, like, it's always going to be a little bit of a roll of the dice. So
yeah, and I mean,
but you're never going to be able to know until you do
it. I mean, this is exactly the point. Is like like with Nocturnal Maneuvers, we couldn't go out and tour that in the US mainly because of COVID.
Right. Of course, yeah.
So it's like, you need to kind of do something in order for other things to kind of blossom out of it. So who knows what will come, but it's important that we felt like it was important to really make a statement of like putting our feet in the water, and also getting to see some of the people who have like got in touch about the band, because there's a lot of people. There's some really, really dedicated people who get in touch and really wanted the chance to see the band, and that's like it's a really nice thing to say that we'll hopefully be doing that for people. I hope they won't be disappointed.
Well, and Tunic's a great pairing for you guys, because that's another. First of all, they're a cracking band. Like, let's that's always nice, right? But like, they're very hard workers, and this is familiar territory for them in some cases. And like, you're not just going in blind, like, with like, all right, here's your map, have fun, storming the castle,
No, I mean, that was, we were very savvy about like, obviously picking an act that we got on with. Johnny had met them in London.
Yeah. Terrible people, just the worst.
Yeah. David.
Oh,
David. He makes the nicest spreadsheets I've ever seen. Like, he sent a spreadsheet over, and it was a thing of beauty. Like, I just keep logging onto it just to look at the little check marks and stuff he's put in. I'm like, I don't even know how to do that.
That's how you know that's how you know you're in a band like where you're adults, right? Where you're like, oh, look at this tour spreadsheet, it's glorious.
I think he's just from my limited knowledge of like, you know, how many Zoom calls with David, he seems very good at that sort of stuff.
Well, and it served them well, right? And they're you know, in a situation where it so happens that their profile of their band was raised, and they were able to capitalize on it by doing the thing that, you know, bands are usually meant to do, but, you know, obviously, again, difficult circumstances. They have gone out there in a real major way, in a way that a lot of bands at their same level either have not or have chosen not to, and that's worthy of mentioning. And if you want to hear more about that, tune in next week when I have him on. But it's a great fit. Like when you mentioned that to me, I'm like, oh, I was like, right on. That actually makes sense, you know. And not that you needed my approval for it. But
no, of course.
Neutron approved it. Great, it's on now. Now it's confirmed.
Right as a little note, so we can show all the promoters.
Exactly.
Conan
Neutron says it's
fine.
Okay. Yeah. All right. Great. Well, we were waiting for that. So
it's got a lot of leverage in the States, hasn't it?
Yeah. It's like when you have a field trip and you need to get the your parent has to sign. Is that a thing over there? That's a big thing here. So
yeah, you still. I mean, I'm not at school anymore, so I can't.
Yeah, I mean, like look. I'm assuming, other than the constant threat of school shootings, I assume it's still a thing.
Oh God.
Yeah. Anyway, but no, it definitely is. Like, it's a good match for you guys, and it's also kind of cool that the bands don't just sound like each other too.
No, I mean I'm quite a stickler for not you know, for understanding the kind of differences and building a show in that way. Like I certainly don't like when things are too, you know, closely aligned, and I think they've certainly got a slightly maybe a slightly more angular, you know, feel to it, which I mean we love that kind of stuff amongst lots of other things, but I think it just made sense on so many levels because, you know, we're all going to hop in a van together as well, right. Which is, you know.
Okay, you better make sure you can get along. Yeah, that's for sure.
Yeah. No, I think that was part of the reason why Johnny had met them before and had very good things to say, so it wasn't kind of jumping in blind. We also like the music.
Yeah. They're just sweethearts too. They're just the nicest folks. They're the best.
Yeah, and also they were interested to do it. You know, that's another thing. Like it's an investment.
Yeah, that is a key factor. Yeah.
Yeah,
absolutely.
I mean, they could have quite easily said like, "Oh no, we want to go out by ourselves." Or I think we had received a few messages from them a while ago saying, "Oh, it'd be really nice to play with you guys at some point."
Yeah.
So, you know, it just naturally aligns, and it's, you know, I'm just really glad that it's we've been able to kind of sort that out early to be able to kind of just like work together on it, you know.
Well, and then you get into a situation where no matter where you're at, you've always got a little bit of home with you because you have your people around you, and like you know there's going to be at least one good band on the bill, you know.
Exactly. No, it's important for us. We've never been to most of these places, so right. It's I'm kind of very thankful to them for being so receptive and, you know, for talking through a few bits. But yeah, no, just really looking forward to kind of, again, it's always this thing with you know, coming from the UK and having that kind of, you know, linguistic link with the States. Mm-hmm. You know, you seeing the States in films constantly from an early age, you kind of think, you know, in an indirect way, but actually I think this will be a really nice way of kind of exploding those preconceptions about certain places and actually being in it. I mean, like the first time you go to New York, and obviously you've seen these things 100 times, but then actually it's real when it's in front of your eyes. You know, I mean, it's always beautiful, the opportunity to travel with what you do and what you love. So, this is quite an extreme example of that with, the 15 dates. So I'm sure we'll get a lot of different flavors of a lot of different places.
You're going to see a lot of different rest stops and gas stations too.
There we go. Yeah, but there'll be new David Lynch ones, won't there? So
yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Some of them, honestly, some of the states you would least expect have really top class like rest stops. Like, wow, somebody really put some effort into this. And some of the ones you're like, wow, this feels like the ass end of a horror movie. But
what is the what is the food on the road food situation like?
I'll tell you this: it's so much easier to get healthier options now, more than ever. Like it used to be, like 20 years ago. Forget it. You better go to the grocery store, son. But these days, like you can find vegan, vegetarian options. You can get stuff that isn't just a bunch of preservatives and food coloring. Like they'll have like whole sections, again, depending where you go, in every state that you can eat like trash like a raccoon if you want, and you can also eat decently. And again, hate to say it, but when as you get older, it's like that matters more and more. Where you're like, you want.
We know how we have to roll these days. I mean, I don't really drink anymore. So right. That helps a lot with the stamina of shows. So
because you're doing a lot already, so it's just like, oh yeah, let's debilitate myself while I'm at it. And it's also cost ineffective. I don't know about you. I just burn it off anyway. I'm like, what's the point? Just sweated it all out. What's the point?
Exactly. So there's
and I'm down $40. Great.
$40 we didn't have in the first place.
Right.
Sure.
That I should not have spent in the first place. Yeah, exactly.
But yeah. So sorry, you go ahead.
Oh, I was gonna say, let's talk a little bit about nocturnal maneuvers, because I do, before we wrap it up, I want to talk about the more recent stuff, including Life Diagrammatic as well. But let's mention again, because that's where I came in with you guys, right? Like actually the first song, Austere Isle, I think is the first song that I heard from you guys. I was like, oh, what's this?
Really?
This is cool. Yeah. Like it was not like I didn't hear anything in order.
Well,
I didn't hear anything.
I mean, that's nice. And my partner, Leona, who's probably asleep down there, she really, really likes and liked that song when we wrote it. And I think, that probably was one of those ones which started to push us into slightly more cinematic areas.
Yeah, because there's almost not that it sounds like krautrock, but there's almost that same sort of exploration of repetition and slower developments that kind of like I was like, oh, that's interesting. And then I went back and there's just, I like the snappier stuff too, or however you want to.
I think we can do. We're both. We know how to do both things quite potently now. Like obviously, like I said when we started, there was a concerted effort just to really hammer it in a really energetic and fun way.
Right.
And I think obviously naturally, you do change, influences come in and it's really nice how it's kind of grown. I think we planted some seeds out here on the fringes, and those seeds kind of grew a bit more in nocturnal maneuvers. And it's nice that you mentioned the kind of krautrock kind of repetitions, because that's something that we really love in music. Like I've always that kind of mechanical drive. It's always something that kind of comes back up in my vernacular when I describe the music. And like
Noi 2 and even some can, where it's just like, oh man, that's so, they just like lock into it. It's so cool.
And I think that's even more satisfying in that 2-piece thing, because Johnny, I adapt my drums round Johnny's guitar parts and he does the same, and then my vocals following his guitar lines at some points, and so it's just we're constantly shifting these levels in and out. Functionally, that's how the actual technique of the 2-amp setup works, with driving the bass in and pulling it out. So we get a lot of kids asking about how we do the
Right,
how we
sure,
do
I'm
it.
curious, of course, yeah.
And that's like, there's no like mystery, like we say, this is exactly how you do it. But the most important thing is you need to know how to exploit it within your idea or
Right.
your song. So it's not going to like automatically make it good. It's
You could go like set up on Battles equipment, and it will sound nothing like Battles, right?
yeah, exactly.
Or whoever, it doesn't matter. I mean, that's just what I thought of, because it's
No.
because they're back to being a two-piece.
Yeah.
Sorry, I two-pieced you. My bad. But so you started off with this record. Did you? It came out in 2021. Had you begun the recording process before COVID hit, or no?
We were writing, and then I moved out of London for a bit just to kind of get some breathing space. Like I still had a place, but I just shifted out to my parents for a bit. So we had this kind of enforced separation.
Right.
But then we were because we were two, we were like able to go into rehearsal rooms a lot sooner than a lot of bands, because it was about numbers of households.
Is fewer people at. Yeah, that's. I never even thought of that. The logistics are. Yeah. Wow. Okay. Interesting.
Yeah. So we kind of, as soon as we knew we couldn't control lots of things in the world, we were like, well, we can control writing new music.
Yeah.
So I think it was quite interesting, because I think we kept going to this studio in Croydon, which is South London, but it's known for not being the most glamorous place in the world. But I quite like it. It's kind of almost enveloped into London, but it is considered its own kind of town. And we would rehearse in this studio that was in this kind of like industrial park, and it was always really late at night. So that's kind of where these feelings of like the kind of nocturnal maneuvers things came in, where like people are forced into kind of doing labor against the kind of circadian clock, of their bodies. And there was lots of these thoughts about that. And that's kind of where, it was kind of what we were doing also with some other kind of elements that we were kind of thinking about at the time. And also that was exacerbated by COVID, because obviously, you were interrupted, and it certainly wasn't an album born out of COVID, but naturally you are responding to the environment.
It's going to be informed by it, in the fact that you live in the world. Yeah, of course. I mean, how could it not be? Yeah.
Yeah, and that's what I'm kind of saying, is like I always deal with things at an arm's length. Like, I'm not saying, oh, the government is bad. The government is bad. It's like everything has to flow through you in order to kind of create something that feels like it should be yours. So.
Yeah,
But,
and
yeah.
so and that comes out like what? It was like fall, right? It was like fall of 2021.
Yeah, we got
It's almost 2 years ago, dude. Can you believe that?
Yeah, no, it's weird. It
Fuck
felt like
me,
it,
running.
Yeah, it's pretty brutal. I'm getting old, but yeah. So we got lucky because all the clubs opened up in around about the time that it came out. So we went on a bit of a mammoth tour to exercise. I say exercise, not exercise, exorcise, like the demon of.
Well,
not
there is
touring.
exercise, but you're also exorcising. Yeah.
Yeah. So we got lucky with that, and then we got ruined by that second wave the next year, because we had European stuff, and that all kind of had to fall apart. So it wasn't the easiest couple of years, although I am. I'm really grateful that we managed to kind of like, we made that record, and we still played it a lot. It was, it was another formative step in the wander of John.
And then, so then post Nocturnal Maneuvers, you had a couple singles that there was the Trauma Mosaic, right? It was
that's actually on the new record. So there was a standalone 7-inch, which was Theme Newborn Jr.
That's what I'm thinking of. Yeah.
Hopper
There
on
we
the
go.
dial. Yeah,
it's got the tickets right on it.
Yeah, it's actually just just tickets from a returned parcel from Germany.
Oh, nice. Here, actually, what am I doing?
Because of the customs. So yeah,
we can again, audio listeners, you're not gonna know what the hell we're talking about, but this is this is what it looks like. And so then from there,
I should say that went to #1 in the UK vinyl single chart.
Yeah,
which is bonkers,
crazy, right? So, do you have any insights into that? Because it's kind of was it just like a right place, right time thing, or?
I think we released it probably released it in a good week, but also like we just have a really loyal fan base who are. I think it's bizarre because people judge things on different metrics these days. There's the metrics of social media numbers that I know you were kind of talking about in terms of algorithms and stuff like that. And then also there is like these hard metrics of people actually buying the music or buying tickets and stuff. So it was incredibly pleasing to be like, regardless of whatever engagement on whatever, like enough people wanted to buy that thing to, it's not like something that I necessarily like was really wanting to get, but it is, as far as a chart goes, at least it is just like a solid number of like, people wanted to buy the most of those in that week. And
I mean, great. That's
fantastic. I mean, it's pretty amazing. We were allowed to get one of those trophies, but they cost £240. So
oh, come on.
Yeah. So everything, even your success, is capitalized.
Of course it is. Yeah.
So we just printed one out on a photocopier, and
right, exactly. You just need one. Just need who needs the actual thing anyway, right?
I mean, it's just a piece of plastic, isn't it? So the memory will be enough. But yeah, so yeah, that was very pleasing, and I think it kind of shows a little bit about how this band, it's just how it's formed in quite a different way to a lot of people.
Certainly, and it's all grassroots support too. It's not like there's any hype train that's
No, I mean we've done very well.
We play bigger shows, but like I mean, if you can play all the big shows in the world, if you don't deliver the goods, it doesn't matter. You're just in the way of someone's favorite band.
Yeah, and I mean, like it has just been a steady growth. It's never been this kind of inflammatory thing.
Sure.
And I don't really like analyzing it too much, but like I said, it's I mean, you could pay lots of money for marketing and still not get anywhere as well. So it's not like mutually exclusive, but that was just pleasing because I think it was just a very organic recognition of 10 years work. So yeah.
Overnight success, 10 years in the making. Yeah.
Yeah, that was actually a headline.
Really? Fantastic.
In our first kind of really good magazine called Loud and Quiet in the UK. Probably one of the few that I respect anymore. And they did a feature for Nocturnal Maneuvers, and that was the headline.
It's a great quote if I do say so myself. Wow.
Yeah, just got there too late, mate.
Damn it. I missed my calling. So talk to me about the new one. It's the time of this recording. Again, this is June, and it's coming out August 22nd, right? So it's
September 22nd.
Oh,
so
the digital is. I'm thinking of okay, my bad.
So sorry. Yeah, the digital that is set. You can't set it that far in advance on Bandcamp, so that's why it's tricked you.
Oh. Fantastic. I'm learning something new myself. September 22nd. So it's going to be in time for the tour, right?
Yeah,
right.
just before. Yeah, just before.
A life diagrammatic.
Yeah. Sorry, mate.
No. I'm the one that put the term algorithmic overlords into like the spiel that I read, and I was like, why? And half the time I just totally screw that up. So it's not you. Tell me about this record. You got some interesting guests.
Yeah.
On here. You want to talk about that?
So firstly, yeah, I mean, my wonderfully talented partner sings on Service Stations, Leona Farrugia,
That's one of the ones that you can listen to now, and you can listen to
Yeah.
it on Bandcamp, and you can listen to it on other.
and she plays in a band called Jen, who are 3/4 Maltese, and Fia, their drummer, is like British, Jamaican, Portuguese heritage.
fantastic.
So they've got a real, I don't know, they're just a really great band, and Leona really kindly kind of hopped on microphone, because we always hear, sometimes you just start hearing some, female vocal or a different vocal, and
Sure.
it's nice to try and honor that for the song. So yeah, we've got Barry Adamson, who is a bit of a legend.
That guy. Yeah. Has he ever done anything else?
A few things.
Yeah, a few things here and there, maybe. Yeah.
So he obviously Bad Seeds magazine, so certified legend, and a lovely man. I noticed because he picked Nocturnal Maneuvers as one of his favorites.
Really?
For
Nice.
Brooklyn Vegan, which was just a really nice thing to see when you know someone who's kind of really well respected kind of pick up on it and choose it for something like that. It's
of course,
amazing. So I kind of followed up, and I realized he lived in Brighton, so I live in Brighton. So I kind of invited him to basically, I kind of discussed him singing certain vocals, and we met up for coffee and had a chat, and I went to see him play at Comedia, which was great, and just kind of struck up a bit of friendship. And he sings on which is it, Ridley Scott Walker. So that's that was a pleasure. And then obviously we have Mr. Simon Pegg, who's
space fame. Has he done anything else?
There's a couple of other things.
Yeah, right. A couple. I haven't looked into it. I'll check it out. No, that's brilliant.
I got an email from him this morning, which is it's just funny, just because we grew up with space.
It's a fucking brilliant show. Yeah.
And so it's special for us. And the thing is it's not just a new thing. Like, basically, Simon's been a fan from almost the very beginning. It's
That's
quite
great.
bizarre. Like, I think there was a track on the first EP that he just really, really loved, and it was one day, and someone just kind of messaged me and said, "Oh, he's tweeted about this song," and I was like, "No way!" So we've gradually stayed in touch throughout stuff, and then I won't ruin it too much, but I kind of had a very distinct idea about writing something, and that thing I just kind of it collided with this idea that he could deliver it, and he was really receptive to it, and he's just been a big support as well. So it's really nice to have these people who are cinematic entities kind of intertwined in this gradually kind of growing cinematic, interest, I guess.
It's a cinematic universe, really. And it gives a certain degree of legitimacy to people that maybe wouldn't otherwise pay attention.
It works. It works in that way. But I wouldn't do that unless I felt like that it really serviced the kind of the idea well. So it was a very distinct. I don't want to say too much about it because I don't want to ruin it. But
that's fine. You can say less.
But there was a kind of intention behind using someone with a recognizable voice, because it kind of referenced that and kind of falls in on itself. And also Barry's just got a very unique, voice that really matched this very specific section,
right?
Which is it's almost slightly narrated but sung, like half spoken, half sung, and it's it was a bit that didn't really need to be me. We just kind of realized that I sing in other parts of the song, but he, it was you just try these things out. You never really know, but you just send the email and be like, okay, let's see how this goes. Because if you don't take a risk, then you're like, what's the point?
Certainly. Tell me about the artwork.
So I got really lucky because I was walking up the street outside this building, and I just noticed this completely dilapidated boiler left on a street.
Right.
And I think I just noticed, you see the refraction on the bronze, and I it just, again, like with a lot of these images that we use, it just kind of hit me. And luckily I went back and spoke to Leona and said, can I borrow your phone, because it's a lot better than my phone. So I went and shot it on her phone, and honestly, I just, it was just a bit like, I think this really kind of speaks quite a lot of the themes that run through the record in terms of, production over production, I don't know, the location that we,
it's an evocative image. I mean, it's sort of like, what's happening there? It's crazy.
Yeah. Well, again, it's like, I don't know. I guess it's probably 10 years of, working within visual arts. You just start to notice things that you find alluring in some kind of way, and how these things, intertwine, in an indirect way, not a completely didactic way. And you want that multiplicity of reading. So when you kind of know that it, and also if you look at it, obviously when you look into the record, you're actually like looking into a perspective of a box. So there's something attractive about the way that it actually sits on the sleeve as well.
Sure.
So there's, some of these things come more semi-consciously and kind of more post-rationally, but I just felt like it worked really nicely. But I know some people were like, well, why would you? Someone said online like, oh, why'd you put like a border on the front? And you're like, just mate, like I don't care. I don't care what you think. Like,
let's see your record. I'm sure it's great.
I'm sure it looks like the idea of a record. I think the idea is not to fall into traps of being like, oh, this is what album artwork looks like, so I'm going to do something like that, or this is what a band should look like. That's I think the music world is full of those repetitions, and I think that's part of the point of trying to push in different directions and try new things out. And I'm not saying that we're like incredibly original in any way, but I do, I just do like exploring different things, and that runs through the name, it runs through the the artwork, and runs through how we operate.
Now, normally when someone's got a new record, I would kind of say we could go through a song by song on it and go through each of them. I know you don't want to spoil all the surprises, but 2 of these are out for the world to listen to. So do you want to, before we start wrapping up, just talk about Service Station and Trauma Mosaic?
So Trauma Mosaic was I'll start with that because that came out as a kind of standalone
single.
That was before the album announced. And I guess, that one comes from, again, it always comes from a multitude of places that get kind of smashed together. But I guess it's just understanding that, like, how you respond to your past, and how you're kind of a result of all the different things that you, all the places you've been in, all of the experiences that you've kind of gained, and how that.
Were you thinking about that with like the layering of the vocals too, as for that?
Not really. I think that just comes more. Sorry, I'm trying to kind of. I have all these notes for the press releases.
Sure.
Yeah,
but that's
pull them up. But it's hard. So some things are easier to describe than others, and some things kind of come more as a matter of fact. But I think so. Service Station is probably easier to talk about on the whole. But I think Trauma Mosaic was just, I think it was just kind of reflecting on. Because ancient set in stone, like being hardened in repetition of tradition or repetition of thought as a person, and obviously doing your best to kind of unlock those sometimes annoying habits, I guess. But service station is probably a bit more exciting to talk about in terms, like in a verbal sense, because there's a few more stories in that. So so that reference is. Do you know William Morris at all? He was a kind of British designer and like political activist who was known for kind of going against industrial revolution.
Like in the 1800s. Yeah. Okay, I know what you're talking about. Yeah.
But he like had his printing press near where I grew up, and he's a figure that's kind of around and has been around like as I grew up. But I was just kind of interested because like when he died, there's a railway that runs into my hometown, and now it's completely erased. So it's kind of funny because he was kind of riding against the Industrial Revolution, but at the same time like didn't really he didn't stop it, and also it's kind of like the erasure of this moment. So there's a kind of humorous or darkly comic thing where his ghost is stuck in the kind of housing estate that's been built over the top.
Oh sure, yeah, okay. Right.
So
I shouldn't laugh. That's horrible, but yeah, I get the idea.
But like how history is often kind of rose tinted. So he's held up as a figure that is still very proudly held aloft by the British, but actually I'd hate to think what he thinks of the kind of world that we live in now.
Oh God, yeah. What would he think of Brexit? Like, oh God.
Well, yeah, exactly. So I mean it's very wordy, but these things do just like they do inform how I kind of come up with these things. So I'm sorry if anyone watches this and think, oh God, this guy's waffling on. But like, I don't know.
I'm the guy. Like, he's like seen as one of the influencers of like the Bauhaus movement, right? I mean, like it was pretty important dude in history. I just, I can't say I had instant recall of him by name. The first thing I thought of was like one of the top talent agencies in the U.S. is William Morris Agency. And so.
Yeah, of course. Yeah,
much more modern and less. And less important to art movements.
Well, yeah, he was part of the arts and crafts movement, which was, taking influence from nature and, I guess not overproducing like certain handmade stuff and whatever. So, yeah. So
a lot of like patterns and stained glass and stuff. It's really cool stuff. I mean, it's. I mean,
it's not like I'm necessarily celebrating the work. I just, he was he did kind of as a figure. Who was kind of going against those kind of industrial,
right.
Overproduced, things that were growing at the time. Like, I don't know, it's an interesting discussion now anyway. But, the song's not solely about that. I guess it's thinking about, thinking about how we kind of move forward into with a world that is, produces a lot of stuff. And that's hard to... that's always landing on your head, being like, how can this keep going? So
where do you stop on your U.S. tour at the first Flying J or pilot? I forget which one it is, and they sell medieval armor for some reason, and like, what? Why can you buy like a big gulp and a helm? I don't understand. I don't understand why these things are here. Why are they? Other than just bored travelers get to like check out this sword that happens to be here. What? Why?
Yeah,
I almost don't want the answer because at least it's entertaining. But anyway,
I'm going to do the whole of the US tour in chainmail.
Yeah, exactly. It's like what? This is like Kansas. Why do you have chainmail? What's that for? Well, cool, man. I'm stoked for. Oh yeah, let me throw up and again, I'll put in the show notes for people not listening live as well. But. You got a killer tour coming up, and there it is. And everyone who is within planes, trains, and automobiles distance of seeing these shows ought to do it. This is going to be a killer tour. I'm stoked for you guys. And I'm excited for this new record. And I think I'm excited to hear it. Excited to see what you guys are up to next. And so I guess anything that we didn't get to that you can think of.
I think it just kind of we really, we've always been a band who really focused on being a live act. So like
right.
as proud as I am as the recordings, I think a lot of bands say this, but I think it makes most sense kind of in the room in front of people's eyes, and there's a kind of distinct way that we go about kind of operating the show, and
it takes on a different intensity.
Yeah, and I think that's really enjoyable, because I think that's something that we've kind of honed over the last 10 years. Yeah. So if people do want to come out and take a chance on it, again, I'm not going to pretend like we're particularly well known in this new territory for us. So it would be nice to see at least a few people in each room, and also we've got the new records coming in September, and I think there is a US exclusive on which is on Vinyl Me Please, which is a subscription kind of service. But,
I mean, there's the ruler, right? There's the package with the ruler, which is
yeah.
Which, as far as like a clever little extra,
it's beautiful.
Yeah,
I got sent a sample, and I was like, I want one of these.
Yeah, you gotta get yourself an architect's ruler and a new LP. Yeah, why not? Sounds okay. Yeah.
You always need a ruler. You honestly,
exactly.
you'll be looking for one.
It'd be like
soon.
If a band did a record release and had like a measuring cup or something, where it's like,
it's handy. It's functional.
It's better
than getting like, I don't know, like something, people try and do like all sorts of radical things, don't they?
Yeah. No, it's a good deal, and I suggest folks pre-order the record and check it out when it comes out. John, this has been killer, man. Thanks so much for spending so much time with me. I know it's wild late where you're at, so I appreciate you taking the time to do it.
No worries. Pleasure. Thank you for having me. And I am a bit lucid with this late night hour, so sorry if I was one, a bit slow, or two, just saying too much about British historical figures. Please come and see us.
There won't be a quiz. Don't worry. So last thing, only canned question I ever ask anyone on the show. You can choose to interpret it however you like, but why do you do what you do?
Because I love it. Like I love the feeling, like the energy of playing live. I just it's incomparable to anything else, and I mean that's probably all I can say. To be able to go into a room, obviously with instruments, but kind of decant this invisible thing that is inside you and share it with other people, like, is a bizarre, very odd, but very amazing thing. And I don't take that lightly, and I'm really privileged and proud that is something that I've been able to do. So yeah, that's my answer.
Very good. I hope to see you in October, sir.
Cool. Take care, mate.
Take care, brother. Appreciate you. There he goes. John Newton, the band John. Awesome guy. Awesome fellow. Let's hear, actually, screw it. Let's hear Service Station, since we're chatting about it, right?
Another good
you go.
Is this thing on?
That was Service Stationed by John. That is off of A Life Diagrammatic. You can get that. Was it Vinyl Me Now in the U.S.? You can also get it on Bandcamp, John Times 2, all spelled out, .bandcamp.com, as well as the rest of their back catalog. Good stuff. Stoked for that record, stoked for that tour. Cool. So this has been Conan Neutron's Protonic Reversal. Thank you so much for listening to it. This show airs Thursdays, 8 Eastern, 7 Central, 6 Mountain, 5 Pacific. Streaming on YouTube and Twitch. Archives of the show always available, protonicreversal.com for free. No ads, no sponsors, no kidding. If you like the show and want to support it, though, $1 a month at patreon.com/protonicreversal will achieve that goal. And it helps support the show and keep the lights on, frankly. Thanks, everyone, for liking the show, subscribing on your platform of choice, sharing it around. All that helps people find the show. Writing reviews, as stupid as that sounds. Helps people find the show, man. It's a darn nice thing to do. Thank you for doing it. I got David from Tunic next week. John's tour mates. So that's going to be exciting. Excited to talk to David.
50,000 watts of power.
Bunch of other good stuff coming up, too. Too much to mention, frankly. But keep it tuned. Keep it tuned here, Protonic Reversal. However you listen to the show, there's no wrong way to do it. Anything else? I don't think so. Oh, yeah, go see John and Tunic on tour. Stay safe out there.
Can you hear me now? Out
Check you
on
later.
Route 128, dark and lonely. I got my radio on. Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now? Welcome to my top 10. I'd like to thank our sponsor. But we haven't got a sponsor. Not if you were the last man on earth. She was prepared to prove it. This one goes out to a special girl. But there is no special girl. It's the end of radio. The last announcer plays the last record. The last what? Leaves the transmitter. Circles the globe in search of a listener. Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now? point really broadcasting if there's no one there to receive? It's the end of radio. As we come to the close of our broadcast day, got my radio